This week, we welcome Robert Siciliano, architect of the Strategic Human Firewall at ProtectNow, to discuss why we need to transition from security awareness to security appreciation. In the leadership and communication segment, should CEOs be held personally accountable for cyber attacks? Placing communication at the center of every leadership transition, AI isn't solving cybersecurity workforce woes, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now. It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for emerging risks, leadership, and communication. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 453, recorded June 22nd, 2026. I am your host, Matt Alderman. I hope everyone had a great Father's Day weekend. And I have a full crew today. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
Let's go.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day. It was a good day. Family, friends, kids, barbecue, lobsters, winning.
Ooh,
right? All day long.
Wow.
That's winning. So it's been a World Cup summer for me. So my son and I went to our second game last week, and we got to see Norway play, which they're pretty amazing too. The Vikings in the stadium are pretty wild. They're loud. They like to row, and they have a bunch of fun. So good stuff.
Kind of like the Scots the week before.
The Scots the week before, absolutely. They've been taking over. I don't know if you see the news, but they're taking over everywhere they go.
Yes, they are. Also joining me this week, Mr. Ben Carr. Also, happy Father's Day.
Thank you very much, Matt. Happy Father's Day to you and everyone else. Happy to be here today. Looking forward to diving into it. It was a nice long weekend for me with Banker's Holiday on Friday there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had one too. So I got a nice 3-day weekend. It was good. And last, definitely not least, Summer Fowler, your husband. Happy Father's Day.
Yes, happy Father's Day to everybody. We had a good weekend as well. Cookout with family and friends, and now we're getting ready to head to Slovakia for the big international tournament for my son. So hopefully we'll be bringing back the gold.
Nice.
Nice. Really nice. All right. One quick announcement, then we'll get into it. Security leaders are being asked to cut risk, control costs, and improve ROI, all while threats continue to escalate. SOC teams are overwhelmed, and throwing more tools at the problem is not working. At the AI for Next Gen SOC Cybersecurity Summit on June 24th, that's this week, learn how to use AI to drive efficiency, reduce analyst burnout, and improve security outcomes without increasing spend. Security Weekly listeners can register for free by visiting securityweekly.com/nextgensoc and use the promo code CSS26-SW. Robert Siciliano is a security analyst, best-selling author, and the architect of the Strategic Human Firewall, is one of the world's most recognizable educators in personal and corporate protection. He is a straight-talk voice for a digital age. Robert, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
So happy to be here. This is the big league, so very honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I've only been doing this 8 years. Paul's been doing it, close to 20, so he's the big leagues. All right. We're going to talk about security awareness training. So let me set the tone a little bit. Yeah. We've been doing security awareness and training and phishing for 20 years. It hasn't worked. It's not working. I guess the big question to me is, why isn't it working?
I think that corporate America has essentially ruined security awareness training. Security awareness training was never meant to be what it is today. It really has only been around, like you said, 15, 20 years, which is basically phishing simulation training. And that is the extent of it to a degree. It might be delivered annually during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. What is that, October?
October.
Sometimes via micro e-learning and hopefully at least, quarterly. And that is just, basically talking about one issue revolving around security, which is phishing. Is that security awareness phishing, like that one problem? And I don't know that it provides a complete picture. It doesn't even talk about the risks that the human faces on a regular basis. It just talks about a singular problem, and it's kind of missing the point.
Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default denied execution in a way that remains enterprise ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/threatlocker.
I was just going to say, is this a situation that, like in many organizations, we've fallen victim to in security? We treat it as a check-in-the-box compliance requirement. It's a question that we get asked during vendor risk, and we say, sure, we have this program, but it's very tactical. It's not, it's transactional. It's not something that we really put the human into the mix here. It's a check in the box, and that's dangerous.
It was accepted as a form of, regulatory compliance training that, popped up, like I said, a couple decades ago. And essentially it bombards employees with complex and personal rules that trigger security aversion, plain and simple. And that compliance trap, I think, is a false sense of security felt by meeting those regulatory requirements while the actual human behavior remains unchanged and vulnerable.
So,
Yeah, so
Robert,
I-
go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, so I spent some time trying to address this human risk problem, which by itself is also not an easy problem to solve for. And the way people thought they were going to do this, and I think this is part of the mistake, and this is why I want to get into different ways to do this, is we started trying to monitor behavior, and then we were trying to use that to bombard them with micro-learning now, not big courses. No, like 30, 45-second clips, and try to teach them in the moment. It's still not working. It's super difficult, and we haven't changed any behavior.
No, because people don't truly care about security, for one, and I'm happy to get into that. They don't care about security. It goes against our core beliefs, and they especially don't care about security in the workplace because it ultimately isn't for them to begin with. We are a self-interested or selfish creature by design. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And we're not actually speaking to the employee or the user as to how security affects them first. And as a result, we're talking about, an issue that ultimately isn't their problem to begin with. And so we've essentially put the cart before the horse. We're not talking to the employee where they're at. And ultimately, we're selling metrics to the COO who says, okay, good, your metrics work, continue, here's your budget. And that it really doesn't necessarily fix the issue of that employee and their behavior in regards to what risk actually is, not just at work, but, in totality. So in the end, nothing changes.
Well, I also think if you get beyond, but let's say you got beyond the problem of it not mattering to them because they perceive it as a business issue, not a personal issue, right? And if you got beyond the regulatory issues, if we're just doing it as the check the box, we're also not, we have a problem of generics. We're not tuning it, right, to the specifics of the individual or their task or function or the security related to them. It's more of a generic assessment of, again, phishing, right? Or general email security, or general, like, how not to let people, tailgate when you're coming in the office with a badge.
Sure.
But it's nothing to do with the difference between someone who's actually generating code versus the person who's actually generating financial statements versus the person who's, ordering food for the cafeteria. Like, it's not specific to the individual. And so when people look at it, they see no tie back to their own job or function or the relevance to their world as they see it, right?
Yeah, and in the end, we're still not actually treating the actual issue of security. These bad things aren't going to happen to me, that they only happen to other people. Like I said originally, we don't actually want to actually engage in security because we don't want to think that bad things can happen to us. Look, humans are we are beings that trust by default. Trust means that we want to and need to trust each other. I need to trust my wife. She needs to trust me. Man needs to trust woman. Woman needs to trust man. In the end, so that we can procreate. That is our default. That is how we come out of our mama. And so we go throughout our lives wanting and needing to trust each other fundamentally to procreate. Security means there are people out there that I should not trust that mean to hurt and harm me. right? And we don't necessarily want to think that we are going to be hurt and harmed. So instead of actually acknowledging those risks, we instead say, you know what? I'm not going to worry about those things. I'm not going to think about those things. They're not going to happen to me anyways. And we actually function in denial. And in the end, nothing gets solved. We put our head under the covers and we can just continue trusting. So when the phone rings, you get a text message or an email in your regular life, you want to believe that the person on the other end actually has good intentions. You don't want to think that bad things can happen to you. And none of that is actually discussed in the existing security awareness training that's being offered in corporate America today. Therefore, we're still experiencing 3,000 data breaches on average every year. And last stat I saw was like 75% of them have something to do with human error, which they click the link, download the file, agree over the phone, and so forth. So what are we doing? We've put the cart before the horse. We're not talking to the human where they're at. And we're essentially shoving, do this, don't do that down their throat, or else they get fired. That doesn't work. So when I'm hired, they're hiring me because they're like, okay, we just want our people to care. Just make them care. Like, our metrics are good, but still we have problems. Why? Because you're not talking to the human where they're at. You're not engaging in even a degree of empathy. You're engaging in metrics, and people don't respond well to that.
Robert, you talk about that strategic human firewall, and I think that's what you're getting to now, and making people care. Can you tell a little bit more to the listeners what makes it strategic? What makes that human firewall strategic?
So I would imagine, or I'm sure, that everybody who's on this call today looks at every single phone call, email, and text message, and you're kind of dissecting it in real time. Like, what's going on here? What is this trying to accomplish? Your BS radar is up. You are already a strategic human firewall, but you don't just do that via phone calls, emails, text messages, pop-ups, and so forth. You're doing that when you're walking down the street. You're doing that while you're driving. You engage in situational awareness pretty much probably wherever you are, no matter what you're doing. You have head on the swivel, so to speak, looking to the right, looking to the left, knowing what's going on behind you, right? And when you're walking down the street, you see that in the concrete and the sidewalk, the tree, the roots have pushed up the concrete. And you let your family know so they don't trip over it, right? You see that stuff. That is strategic human firewall. You're engaged in paying attention, right? Most people don't do that at all. When I say most, I'm talking like 90+% of the world's population aren't truly paying attention. We've seen more pedestrian deaths in the past decade because not only are the people actually looking at their phone as they're crossing the street, the drivers are doing the exact same thing. People aren't paying attention. They're getting killed as a result. And so strategic human firewall really is a proactive governance. It's a mindset that is designed to block deception, right? It turns employees from passive targets into active detection layers. Like, they're looking for it. Not because they're worried, not because they live in fear, not because they're paranoid, which is a big deal, and it's resistance to security, which I'm happy to talk about. It's the shift from I trust what I see by default to I verify everything. It goes way beyond zero trust, right? It is truly what we call security appreciation. It is the shift from basic awareness, which in my mind, from my perspective, awareness is in your head, it's neck up, to know, which is knowing, to appreciation, which truly is from your heart up, which is caring, right? It's basically when employees appreciate how security protects their own lives, behavior changes permanently. How do I protect my own identity? How do I manage my own passwords? How do I protect my own money and bank account? How do I protect my kids' digital footprint and so forth? We don't talk about any of that stuff. And the self-interested, selfish aspect of humanity needs that first before they care about phishing simulation training to begin with. And as a result, right, that security appreciation gap is the chasm between an employee's intellectual understanding of risk, which they have a general understanding of it, in the emotional commitment to act on that risk or that knowledge, which is appreciation truly. It makes them care, which ultimately achieves what I call the kitchen table effect, which basically is the multiplier effect where successful training ends with the employee going home, teaching the concepts to their family, cementing those lessons for life. Try doing that with phishing simulation training. It just doesn't work.
So Robert, how do you start to make that what I'll call, depending on your culture, right? Because some cultures, exactly the position you're talking about. How do you make that monumental shift of culture? Because it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of stakeholders to be on board. Because the last thing you want to be doing is teaching this philosophy and getting it, put into your daily work activities, and then you look up and the C-suite isn't doing it. The C-suite's not supporting it. The C-suite is giving a blessing to ignore the cybersecurity training because it's friction on the business. How do you combat that? That's a big lift to change an entire culture.
Actually, it's really just a single decision. Yeah, let's do this. Look at I'm a dad, happy Father's Day. And, I have spent my past 17 years with my younger and 20 years with my older having a dialogue. And that dialogue often revolves around, they come home upset and I, listen. And I contribute based on my life experience. I try to shorten their learning curve by providing them with examples that I've seen work for me and others. And ultimately, we hug and they move forward with a little bit more information that they can use to change their reaction or response to when that might happen again. And that dialogue truly is what I find, gets my children happy and motivated and Dean's List and honor roll and balanced, right? And so I wouldn't call myself like this crazy parenting expert because I screw up here and there, but I know enough that I have adjusted kids, right? And I know that like current security awareness training is a monologue. It's being talked at, whereas when I engage an audience, it's a conversation. It's a dialogue. I ask questions. They ask questions. I ask questions like qualifying questions, belief challenging questions. How many of you have a home security system? Which is like a really simple question. And I might get like 15% of the room to raise their hand. And the reason why I ask that question is because security starts in the home. Okay. All security fundamentally is personal security. Even at the highest levels of government, those that are responsible for protecting our critical infrastructures, it begins for them at home. If you truly believe in security, you're going to do your job that much more effectively. Okay. So how many of you have a home security system? If I get 15% of the room to raise their hand, that's a lot. And then I start asking questions. Okay. So why don't you have the home security system? And the answers begin to, come, like they raise their hand. Okay, we don't have a home security system because we have insurance, as if insurance is going to protect you at 3 a.m. So right there, you can see how not well thought out they are. And then the next answer is, we don't have a home security system because my husband says if they're going to break in, they're going to break in. There's not much we can do to prevent it. And my response to her is, yeah, you should divorce that guy, because he's engaged in fatalism because he doesn't truly believe in security to protect his family. She doesn't laugh, but the rest of the room does. And then the next most common answer, which is the most telling answer, is, well, we don't have a home security system because I don't want to live like that. And I say, well, what does that actually mean? And she says, well, I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to have to worry. And I said, well, okay, so I'm a guy that actually has 20 plus security cameras. And so what might you think about my disposition, my belief systems? Like I wake up every day with 20 security cameras, maybe a little excessive, but I got a decent sized property, maybe a little excessive, but what might that say about me? What do you think they say immediately? He must be what?
Paranoid.
Yeah. And she says, exactly. I don't want to be paranoid, which is so telling. Because most employees think that their CISO is paranoid. He or she is making me do this because they're paranoid. We as a culture have a negative view as to what security is. We think it's a bad thing, truly a bad thing. Paranoia is a mental health dis-ease. People who suffer and truly suffer from that are essentially out of control. Security is about managing risk. It's about gaining a degree of control. It is the complete opposite of security. So when you begin to explain this to a live audience in a dialogue. They're like, whoa, I never really thought about security like that. Huh, that's interesting to me. I'm interested to hear what you say. So now, when I'm hired, initially I walk in the room, they introduce me, the entire audience is looking at me with a scowl in their face. Okay, security guy, tell me what I already know. Please now, let's get this over with, right? Arms crossed, the whole thing. And as I engage them in this dialogue, you know what happens? The hands go down by their side. Their eyes begin to wide open a little because now they're curious. The scowl goes away from their face. And as the arms go down, the hands begin to go up. You know why? Because they got questions. And they've had questions for their entire adult lives that they could have asked the CISO, but they never did because the CISO was inaccessible, right? And those questions revolve around things like, how do I know what links are okay to click when I do a Google search? Which is like the most basic question you can possibly think of. But they all ask it because they want to know, because no one's ever actually provided them the answer, because they've never had an opportunity to ask the question ever, because there's never been a dialogue regarding security awareness ever in their lives, both personally and professionally. So the answer to your question is, a dialogue is how you get buy-in, is how you begin this process. And everybody who's in the room, including the stakeholders, are now like, huh, so that's how this is done. That's how you actually engage in security awareness, which actually truly is security appreciation. Security is a good thing. So I ask you guys a question really quick. When you're on the airplane and the flight attendant is providing instructions in regards to the oxygen mask, what does she say when the oxygen mask comes down? What do you do first?
Pull it down to start the flow of oxygen.
And then what?
Put it on yourself
Then you put it on yourself.
Yes, and why is that?
because
So
you
that you
don't want to
have-
pass out.
Well, so that you can actually take care
Breathe.
of others.
Yeah,
you
take
know?
care of other
Take care of
people.
others. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly like ultimately the end game there, right? Like you're with your kids and such. So yeah, you would think put them on your kids first, but like what good are you if you're passed out now? You've got two breathing kids screaming, taking off their mask now because they don't know what to do. The point is we need to train the human where they're at, engage them what security is, risk management versus what it isn't, paranoia. And once they
Robert,
understand,
can I ask you a question about that? How do you scale a dialogue across a large enterprise?
so I just spoke to a company that basically rolled out 5G. They create most of the chips in your cell phones. I've spoken in an auditorium of probably a beautiful auditorium with probably 400 people that was broadcast to 5,000 people worldwide. And I was answering questions from people overseas via Zoom, and I'm answering questions in front of 400 people to 5,000 people. And it's interesting because when somebody asks a question and I say, yes, sir, you had a question. And he asked the question. And then 10 seats down, a woman had her hand up earlier. Yeah, you had a question. Oh, he just asked it for me. Because they all have the same questions. They all have the same concerns. Everybody does. And to this day, nobody, with the exception of me truly, is answering those questions. Because I don't know that anybody who's a CISO has the background that I do. My background is personal security. Like I literally have been speaking to real estate agents for 30 plus years because realtors are murdered. And they also handle personal and sensitive information. So I've been speaking to realtors about how to prevent being killed and how to protect their email since 1995. So that perspective, all security is personal, truly it begins. Violence and theft prevention is personal security. Theft prevention is personal security. Stealing your identity is personal security. Even though it's digital, it begins with the human in their personal security, in their want, in their need, in their recognizing of risk, which they don't truly understand because they're not being trained to do so.
So Robert, you talk to a group, you have this dialogue. To me, that's the starting point to get them to start to understand. But then how do you continue this? Do they bring you back every quarter, every year? Like, what's the recommendation is, look, I got Robert in a room. He answered all these questions. People have a different appreciation for what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Then what? How do you get it to stick? Right?
Okay.
Like, what does that ongoing program look like? Because I think that's the other question that companies are trying to figure out. Because look, I get security awareness training every month. It's part of my checkbox mentality. It's part of our SOC 2. I have to do it, right? Look, we know it doesn't work, but all right, I'll do it because I'm the chief product officer. I should go through the training and not look like the ding dong. But what should companies be doing? How often should they be doing it to allow this to continue?
Okay, there's a couple things there. So first and foremost, like I would love it if they hired me every quarter, semi-annually, or every year. That's not going to happen, right? Which is fine. My goal is a paradigm shift. My goal is to shift behavior by shifting people's thinking. And you shift people's thinking first and foremost by truly defining what security isn't, which is not paranoia. And you have to kind of go through like the rigmarole of getting them to the point where you challenge their belief systems and, you know, what security is, what security isn't. And they go, aha, got it. Now, what's next? So 100% of the time when I get off the platform, there's a line of people waiting for me, right? And they're always like, hey, you know, like I got to tell you straight up, man, I don't want to be here today. I came here because my boss made me come here today. I didn't think I really needed this because, you know, I'm pretty savvy with this stuff. But I got to tell you, this was great because it's not what I thought it was going to be, which is kind of why they hired me to begin with, right? Because I gave them something different. And they said, because you talked about me and my risks and my concerns. I get a question like, do you do this for high school kids? Like, do you do this for women's groups? Like, I really wish my spouse was here because he or she would have loved it. That's the type of reaction that you want to get. And so the dialogue that we have with the audience is like, okay, so my dad can't stop clicking links. My mom, who, you know, is widowed now because my dad died a few years ago, like she's involved in all these romance scams. What do I do? And here's the deal. Every single company officer has the same people in their life with the same problems, including the CISO, including the COO, including the CEO. Every employee has the same people in their lives with the same problems. And so knowing that, and knowing how to address those people who you are now prepared to provide security appreciation, security awareness training as an individual, because you truly recognize risk now after literally an hour and a half of dialogue. You know what to do now because you've just experienced a paradigm shift. Look at when we experience health issues, right? We learn by default as a result of the potential tragedy or ongoing treatment that we're getting. We become experts in this unfortunate issue that we now have to learn about because of a disease we have. You do not want to have to learn about security as a result of being victimized. You do not necessarily have to learn about a potential health issue by becoming a victim of a disease. There are certain diseases that you could actually like eat the right foods, drink the right fluids or the right amount of fluids, get enough sleep, like do certain things proactively, move, work your cardio so you don't become sickly. Like you can engage in basic one-on-one security practices and not become a victim. And your mindset going forward is different because you understand what to do now. You appreciate the value of this information, whether it's health information, diet, nutrition, exercise, security awareness has in your life. That's not a complicated thing, but we don't do that at all. So when the stakeholders are actually in the room as I'm presenting, all of leadership now has what they need, but so do the frontline employees. It is truly not that difficult to do. It is simply
Robert,
a dialogue that nobody's
where
had.
do they go from there, right? So you spend an hour and a half with the team. They get their minds blown because they've never heard security spoken to that level in that way. But like you made reference to, taking care of your health. You know, I could go sit there and see a motivational speaker who's an excellent exercise physiologist for an hour and a half. But at the end of the day, you know what I have to do? Get my ass up at 5:30 in the morning and work out every day. I have to go eat right and do a diet, and I have to take care of myself. What's the care and feeding after they speak to you, after you speak to them? What's the care and feeding to make sure they get on that health trip?
It is such small increments, like such small stuff, like small little changes in behavior end up ultimately being big things, right? So it's like, like back in the day in New York, like the broken windows theory, spray paint everywhere, broken windows. All they did was just clean up. They cleaned up. And then before you knew it, like New York was beautiful, right? And people's behavior changed. Well, when it comes to security awareness, it's like I get in front of a live audience. One of the most common questions I ask is like, how many of you can honestly say you're using a different passcode for all your critical accounts? If I get 10% of the room to raise their hand that they're using a different passcode, that's a lot. How many of you are using two-factor authentication for all your critical accounts, including your personal email? If I get 15% of the room to raise their hand, that's a lot. How many of you are using a password manager? If I get 10%, that's a lot. These basic questions, and then I turn around and say, okay, did you know? And I show them, Constella says 300 billion of our records have basically been exposed over the past couple of decades. About 20 billion of those records are passwords. And I show them, I take them live to Russian forums and show them passwords for sale on the dark web. And this is why you can't be using the same passcode across 20 accounts. And they're like, whoa, I didn't know that. So password manager, which one do you recommend? And now like that basic thing, they're like, okay, password manager, but what if the password manager gets hacked? Fatalism. Like these are how you break down the barriers, right? And then you show them, oh, I've had a password manager for 20 plus years. It's great. It manages my digital life, my privacy, my security. I don't remember any of my passwords. It's like my mobile phone. I don't know my mother's phone number, but my phone does. I don't know my passwords, but my password manager does, and so forth. It's like, oh, that's good. Basic 101. Start with passwords. Start with two-factor. How do you set up two-factor authentication? Google it. You search Gmail, two-factor. You search AOL, if you still use AOL, you're adorable, two-factor, and they laugh and it's funny. Like basic stuff. And all of a sudden, like they're engaged in two-factor authentication because it now makes sense to them. They're using a password manager because I can't believe I didn't use a password manager up until today. This is so easy. Like basic stuff. And that turns into bigger stuff and bigger changes in behavior. All you've got to do is get out and walk a couple of miles a day, if that. You just got to make better choices in the menu that are less sugary and less starchy. We're not talking about this massive overhaul of your life. We're talking little small changes in behavior, not these huge things that are burdensome. Look, if security is not easy, people aren't going to do it. If security is not like at all, like if it's too cumbersome or overwhelming, forget it. I'm not doing it. And we're seeing a backslide in behavior when it comes to security. People are giving up. They're truly throwing their hands up in the air. They've given up. Look it up. Look, security backslide. Google it. And that's not because it's harder. It's because it's overwhelming and nobody's providing perspective.
So I just went through this last week. My in-laws got a text from Apple Security.
Oh my God.
Which doesn't exist. And the aftermath was not fun, but it boiled down to, here's a password manager to manage all your passwords and turn two-factor authentication on all your stuff. Period. That's what I told them. Now they do, but they didn't, right? Yeah. And rule number 3, never, ever download a piece of software from somebody you don't know or trust. Like, just don't do it. Because that was the other thing, is they got her to download software onto her phone. So I had to basically erase the phone, start over from scratch. This has happened just last week, right? Yeah. They're in their 80s, right? This is the baby boom generation we're dealing with. Some of them are our employees, some of them aren't. But this is the environment we're in, Robert. And that's why this topic's so important, because there's so much of this that just happens every single day.
What organized crime is doing right now is awful. It is truly altering people's lives where they're losing everything and literally taking their own lives in some cases. It is awful. And at the same time, it is truly awesome what they do. How they have basically figured out how to manipulate humans in so many ways by attacking our biology, by attacking what I call the human blind spot, which is our want and need psychologically and biologically to trust others. When they figured out the loneliness loophole and the 25% of all humans wake up every day just feeling lonely. And like hunger pains, the pain and ache of loneliness, we will do almost anything to extinguish it. And none of that is discussed with a live audience when it comes to managing risk. And all of that means everything, because it does. Because there's a $124 trillion transfer of wealth that's occurring right now between the baby boomers and their kids, and their grandkids. 124 trillion. And that generation is the target of all of this organized crime right now. Pig butchering, wrong number text scams. It's all perfect and it's brilliant, and it's being supported by AI and deep fakes and voice cloning. And AI is scaling neural puppetry. And they want to know what links are okay to click on a Google search. So until we actually engage the human and actually have a dialogue with them, engage in a bit of empathy. And I'm not asking a single CISO to walk out there and hug your employees and hold their hand. I'm asking you to kind of flip it on its head a little bit, just change the paradigm even just a little bit. Just a tinge more empathy. Go beyond the metrics just a little bit. Think about your mom, think about your dad, think about your widowed sister maybe, and how vulnerable people are and how worried and fearful people truly are. We are adults handling the adult world, often like our 5-year-old emotional selves. Often, when you think about it, strife and conflict. When it comes to security, similarly. Like when you're 5 years old and you're playing with Johnny and Johnny bit you because kids bite, you're like, whoa, Johnny's not to be trusted. But we don't necessarily take the lessons of Johnny biting us and being hurt and harmed and actually learn from them. We say, oh, I don't want that to happen to me again. And we kind of curl up in a ball a little bit. And we don't want to think about that stuff ever again versus learning from it. And so you can take other people's experiences and tell stories and actually like get in front of a live audience and have a full-blown dialogue and talk about like real world events that are happening right now and like how interesting they are, because it really is interesting. And truly, there has never, ever been a time in history to actually have that dialogue than right now today, because AI and deep fakes are like modern day Hollywood stories. It's like Mission Impossible meets The Minority Report meets 007. It is awesome. It is such a brilliant, beautiful, energetic story is what it is. And it's scary as hell. And it keeps people on the edge of their seat, and they want to know, because this is interesting. You know what's not interesting? Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is dead, and they've ruined security awareness. If you talk about cybersecurity at all, it's dead. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to come. They don't want to pay attention. They don't want to be in the room. But you talk about AI and deep fakes and voice clones and all that stuff, they're like, whoa, I'm interested in what that has to say. And you structure the title and the program description around that and the learning objectives around protecting yourself and your digital footprint and your passwords and your family's information. They're like, I want to come to that. That's how you make that happen.
We're going to cover that in an article on the next segment. Robert, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Hey, don't get me started.
This episode is sponsored by Microsoft Edge for Business, the browser with built-in protections for Microsoft 365 customers. With employees using AI and web apps more than ever, Edge for Business helps you stay in control, securing sensitive data, protecting against shadow AI, and stopping threats right in the browser. You don't need to worry about added extensions, new tools, or extra costs. It's the secure enterprise browser you already have, built for the era of AI. Visit securityweekly.com/edge for business to learn more. The rules just changed. AI like Mythos now finds and weaponizes 0 days on its own, and your patch window just dropped from weeks to hours. One prompt, Titanium Atlas. It scans thousands of endpoints in seconds. It confirms which machines are actually breached, then hunts the attacker's command and control. Atlas then acts to isolate, quarantine, rotate credentials, and patch every endpoint in real time. Titanium Atlas. AI that doesn't just answer, it executes. Find out more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. All right, we got them wound up. Now we're going to get into this week's articles. All right.
Whew.
So there's a couple in here that are interesting. They kind of tie into this topic just a little bit. First article, Regulatory Whiplash, Why Cyber Resilience is Now a Governance Imperative. I think it always has been.
Yeah.
I think the industry is just now catching up to the last 8 years, Jason, of what we've been trying to tell people.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little before on the other segment. I mean, we've been treating it like this static compliance check in the box, just spreadsheet, right? And we can't be doing that anymore. We need to learn the lesson of that, because just treating it from a compliance perspective, check in the box exercise. Nobody cares about when you're a malactor, you don't care about the organizational boundaries. You don't care about the rules that are in the spreadsheet, right? So yeah, it should be those answers to those questions, like we talk about all the time. That should be a byproduct of your good security program. Done.
Cybersecurity can no longer operate as a technical control function in isolation. It must be embedded within enterprise risk management, board reporting, and strategic decision making. Boy, that sounds like the last,
years and years and years and years.
Yes.
Of conversation.
I know. Here we are.
We are.
We're just in our spreadsheet, Jason. That's it.
I can guarantee you, Matt, if we went to one of our podcasts from about 7 years ago, we probably said, in 5 years, we're going to be talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could find one of them.
Yeah. Look, and we talked about a little bit of this last week, Jason, I think a little bit, and I've seen this evolving trend, some of these areas, right? This data sovereignty thing is a real thing, folks, right? And I deal with it almost every day now. Like it's gotten to the point where nobody trusts anybody in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, my data has to stay in my country. Yeah. And I think we're going to see more of this. And it changes how you have to approach some of this stuff and the issues that get injected here in how you manage your ongoing business. Like if you're a SaaS provider that's running in the US and has no plans of figuring out, this is a major impact to your business and to the way you operate. And I don't think people are really thinking through some of this yet.
No, and like we said last week, it's going to force businesses to think about whether or not they even want to do business in certain countries now.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's all. Yeah, I think it's going to put some additional thought to the limitations of expansion, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there are always concerns you look at, like what's the cost to enter a new territory, jurisdiction, whatever. But I think regulatory and, cyber regulation on this is going to raise its head, and people are going to say, it's just not functionally something we want to get involved with to do business in this country, right? And so I think SaaS is going to be less ubiquitous because it's going to be very regional limited.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think you're exactly right. Although it's interesting that, and I agree with the fact that cost driver is a big deal. However, we still have organizations, when you look today at, Clue and the Salesforce integration issues that have happened and what happened with Snowflake. It's like we care about this data sovereignty issue because of the cost, yet we don't worry about integration accounts. Tesla and Apple may have had some of their data stolen in, some of their IP stolen in a breach just over, the past 24 hours. And it's like, we don't care where our data is with other partners or those integrations. And so we need to pay attention to that as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Article number 2, should CEOs be held personally accountable for cyber attacks?
Welcome to the party. Yeah, they should.
No, so the answer is yes. The real question is, will they be held accountable for cyber attacks?
Probably not. And I look at it this way too. It's the blessing and the curse, right? Think about what happened when CISOs became personally liable. What happened to the amount of CISOs who wanted to be CISOs anymore?
Yeah.
What's going to happen when CEOs start looking down the barrel and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I don't think I want to do that. Are we setting it up for, I don't know, some type of talent stall, where you have CEOs not wanting to take the job because of that?
Yeah.
I mean, personal
I mean, it's very
liability is
possible.
a big freaking deal. Big deal.
Yeah. But the CEOs also have had a level of
It's already
protection
got some
around them.
responsibility for other areas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I would hope you had had a CEO who understands finance coming in, right? They have that knowledge. They have that background. They don't know anything about cybersecurity coming in. So it's a blind spot for them.
I like there are a lot of people who have the financial experience, right? But I've also seen a lot of people who come from product backgrounds and don't really have the financial experience, right? That a CFO would have in that role.
Yeah.
They're protected by liability, right? Like they're protected by, you know, with indemnifications and when they don't do the job. Like that's pretty typical for a CFO or a CEO, right? And generally named officers, right, who are included in the policy. It hasn't been for CISOs. I just think this would be a good fit, whereas you start to see that connection. It's when the CISO asks for coverage now, right? We're going to offer it because I understand where that's coming from, right?
Yeah.
They understand how that connection.
I think my point is, I don't think the likelihood is high that this is going to happen because they're not going to want to take on additional liability at all.
This goes back to that question of like, are we going to see regulation for this, right? Are we going to see, you know, the SEC or somebody else like, you know, start to apply guidance around this? And I think they need to, right?
Yeah, I think the challenge is that they've done a better job at being able to say what do reasonable financial controls look like and defining those reasonable cybersecurity controls that evolve over time as threats evolve, as other things evolve. I think that's where the challenge lies. You know, there's the stick by which we measure hasn't been created yet.
Yeah, how to read a balance sheet hasn't really changed that much, but cyber controls certainly have. So
They have, but let's go back to the first article. Let's talk about this in a risk kind of component. You can identify material and non-material risks. They do it for Sarbanes-Oxley all the time from a financial perspective, right? So there is some precedence here. If we could actually figure out how to quantify our cyber risks, we could use some of the same measurements for our financial risks to understand what's material and what's not material to the organization to allow the CEO and the CISO to potentially sign off on those risks. I'm just saying, like, this is
I don't disagree with you, Matt. But where I think there's a real challenge is if we take this all the way through to a court case. And now you're trying to explain these things, even on the most fundamental human level. Explaining the financial things is easier than explaining the cybersecurity things. And I mean, I think that if we took this all the way down the chain, things start to settle, they fall out. And we see it even in court cases today where fewer things that have a technical cybersecurity side actually make it into a courtroom. They settle outside because it's so complicated. They know that it's going to be really tough for a jury or even a judge to be able to, you know, sort through it. So
we'll just hire Robert, put him in front of the jury to educate them on the importance of cybersecurity. And because that's exactly what he was just talking about in the last segment. Our employees don't know the issues with cybersecurity, let alone a jury.
Right?
Yeah.
Gosh. All right. 3 forces are redefining the transition from manager to leader. A lot of AI stuff in here and what's kind of forcing some of these changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing the dynamic as to how we work at the end of the day. And, you know, if you're middle manager, director level, you better start embracing these tools because you got to be able to move quicker, faster, make decisions faster, you know. And I kind of like how they broke out, you know, some mindset shifts. Instead of being a specialist, you need to start getting into that generalist of speaking to the business, speaking to technology, speaking to how they interact with each other. You know, turn from being a tactician to a strategist, right? Really using the tools that are available to make you more efficient and make decisions faster.
So the thing where this article fell short for me is that he started to use the words that I find as almost the most important, but failed to actually get far enough. Like he talks about, analyst to integrator, bricklayer to architect. But there's also the element of being a leader is you have to inspire people.
Sure.
And this is lacking that inspiration and direction. Now, he does mention strategy and he does mention diplomat, but neither of those really speaks to, like, when you really think about those great leaders, some of these things, they even have people underneath of them that they do. They're the people that are saying, this is the direction where we need to go, and I'll help get us there, and we're going to get there together. And, that inspiration to me is just something that was really lacking in this.
Next article, placing communication at the center of every leadership transition. Now, this is talking about transitional leadership.
Yeah.
However, to your point, Summer, this communication is also important during those other transition manager to leader transitions as well, right?
Yeah.
That starts to bring in some of the missing components that I think the previous article did not have.
Yes. The other thing that I was thinking about this as Robert was talking, that we are, intrinsically somewhat selfish. And when you think about, and we've all been through those times in companies where your company's shutting down or you're laying people off. It is important to remember that when you're communicating any sort of change, you have to communicate how it's going to impact the people that you're communicating to almost first, right? It can't be, this is what's happening to the company at large, and this is what's happening to, it has to be about the people you're communicating to, because that's their concern. Robert wasn't wrong in that. If you can say, this is what's changing and here's how it's going to impact you. I think that's so important.
Just to tether into that, Summer, it has to be proactive. It can't be reactive. The biggest piece to take out of this article, at least from my perspective, is you want to be able to define the narrative, not have the narrative defined for you. Because when people assume, they're going to build their own narrative, and that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing, because it's going to be based on fear and anxiety and a fear of the unknown. You have to define the narrative proactively. Get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you're looking at communicating, you have to understand the entire audience. It's not always just the audience that you anticipate the message going to.
Sure.
There's a much wider audience in that, right? And so how that's going to be perceived, how that's going to be translated by people who consume that messaging, it's really, really important that you think about the full scope of that.
And to your point, Ben, it may be different communications to different audiences.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really think about that
ahead of time.
Right? You have to think about that, because you may have to take a communication and write it a specific way for specific audiences, and it's gonna take you time. It's gonna take time for you to do it, but at least you're delivering the message to the audience the way the audience needs to get it.
Yep. AI isn't solving cybersecurity workforce woes. You don't say.
I thought everything got solved by AI.
I just thought everything was instantly solved with AI.
Yeah.
Magic
Just go to
button.
Copilot and say, do it all, and it does it.
I told you guys, right? I've been working on this new app, been using the vibe coding. It's great in some things. It truly is. But then you will get into rabbit holes, and I'm telling you, it can't figure itself out. No wonder it hasn't solved all of our cybersecurity woes.
I was working on something the other day, and I got significantly way into it. And then it said, that's awesome. If you want to take it to the next step, tell me, give me this, and I'll take it to the next step. And I gave it this. And then what I got had nothing to do with what I just asked it. And it's like, where did this go awry? Let me start over.
It does help in certain areas. I will tell you that. I've seen improvements in certain areas, but then, man, there's just some things it can't figure out, and it just slows you down. You will get caught into loops. I've been working on just simple stuff, like permissions around Google Meet invites and who owns them for the recordings and the transcriptions. I've been looping around this thing for over a week, almost 2 weeks, because as soon as I fix one thing, it breaks something else.
So now think about this. We're technologists and cybersecurity professionals who've been in technology our entire careers. Let's take, I don't know, a finance clerk. How do you think they feel? trying to use these tools that get thrown at them. Hey, we got this new fancy AI for our, our ERP system. Ready, set, go. And they're not getting the readiness training. They're not getting enabled. They're not getting what they need to be able to perform. And they're trying to work their way through it. We have a hard time as professionals.
Yeah.
Imagine
I think
that.
the way that the tie-in from the last two articles is that the rollout of AI has, in many places has not been strategic in thinking about what they want to achieve. It hasn't been communicated well. And so we have that leadership communication failure. And then, like you mentioned, the training isn't there. It just seems, it would be really hard. It would be like handing someone a TI-85 calculator, that's probably like the ancient version, that they've never seen before and said, go do your advanced calculus on this. And they just want to throw it down and do it on paper because they don't know how to use that calculator.
Yep.
And so you need to train them and you need to go through it. So I think that this does tie in nicely to the other leadership angles.
And the last article, help employees get better, not just faster with AI.
Yeah.
Right? That's ultimately the goal, right? We think
100%.
these tools are just going to make us faster. And as I said, in certain cases, it will make you faster. In other cases, it will make you a lot slower. And we need to help our employees understand that.
This is what I've seen. I've seen it erode quality because they talk about work slop, and you get folks who want the easy button, and they'll literally take whatever AI produces, copy and paste, and throw it out there to the masses. Yeah. Hello, some of the articles that we put on the show, right? I mean, we've looked at some of them and said, yeah, that's like 90% AI, no doubt about it, right?
Yep.
It's the work slop. Our quality, our output quality is going to diminish if we allow it.
Yeah, my two biggest concerns is that, we're going to generate a lot of information with expected accuracy, but the accuracy isn't going to be there, right? That's one certain thing. Then the other thing is we're going to get to the point where we've replaced people for tasks, especially on the cyber side, thinking that there's going to be some efficiency. And then we're going to get to where we realize that the cost, right, is much higher. And when you shut off the cost on the AI side, you've got no one to backfill to take up that task because you've gotten rid of the worker on the other side, right? Whereas if, you're paying the yearly salary for somebody, you've got them for the whole year, right? Like you've got that embedded cost. So, and you know what it is, right? There's no magic window where, at the end of the month, somebody just gives you an invoice for AI costs. And you're like, oh, that was how many tokens? So, I think we need to look at fast is slow and slow is fast, right? Like make sure that we're looking at the quality going in, and you'll get faster going out, but you got to question everything.
I think it's also a reminder that critical thinking is not going to ever be taken over, right? So I think that all of us will get better and the world will get better with the use of AI. It still is going to require the critical thinking of where it needs to be applied and how we check and make sure the outputs are what they should be, et cetera, et cetera. And so for the people listening who are worried about their kids or worried about their own jobs in the future, stay that critical thinking, side of things. Be really, really curious and don't be afraid to try and fail, but know where to do that. Right. Like pick those low consequence areas to do some of this early experimentation.
I see it today, right? Like we have some developers they depend 100% on AI and don't have the critical thinking, so they can't explain what the code's doing. Yeah. And that's a mistake, right? Then I have on the other side, I have folks that don't embrace any AI. They're just building everything from what they know. There's actually a balance. And that's what I'm starting to see is how can I gain efficiencies, not speed. How do I gain efficiencies with critical thinkers that can leverage AI to help them be more efficient in producing code to get out the door, right? I think that's the balance we're looking for, because the critical thinking is going to look at the code and go, why did it do that? Like that just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. But if you don't have that skill set, you're going to push that code into a PR. It's going to go in, it's going to fail, it's going to get a bug, and then AI is going to try to rewrite it, which is kind of the loop that I'm stuck in. I just wanted to do a simple turn on, record, and transcribe. It says, hey, I did it for you. No, you didn't. It's still broken, right? Like, that's not what we want to get ourselves into. And it's trying to figure out that balance.
Consider that.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's broken better.
Yeah, it's broken better. Yeah.
But Matt, to your point, and to be honest with you, all of your points, there needs to be a focus on quality. There needs to be quality metrics that are
Yes.
instilled now, right? Instead of just
Yeah.
speed to product or speed to action, you have to have quality built into it. Have to. It has to be a metric that you're looking at.
I guess Six Sigma's coming back.
Yay. Let's go.
It'll be seven now. At least 7.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you all for joining me today. It was awesome to have you all here. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.